Hello learners, welcome back to our lesson. As I had promised you earlier, when we were talking about the human body, we began by having a look at the male reproductive system, and then we also talked about the meaning of reproductive system. Apart from that, we talk about reproduction, whereby we said it is the process by which living organisms fuse to produce new offspring. Now today we are going to have a look at the female reproductive system. Remember, I told you that we have got parts which make up the male reproductive system, and we also have got parts which makes up the female reproductive system. Now there are only a little bit difference between the male reproductive system and the female reproductive system. That is, we have got those parts which are present in the male reproductive system but are absent in the female reproductive system. The same, we have got the parts which are present in the female reproductive system and are not present in the male reproductive system. Now, in our previous lesson, we talked of the parts of the male reproductive system whereby we said we have got the scrotum, we talked of the glands, we have got the penis, we talked of the urethra, and we talked of the bladder, and finally we did talk of the sperm duct. Now, when we are talking about the female reproductive system, we are talking of the parts which are involved in a woman. Remember, when you are talking of the parts of the male reproductive system, we talk of the parts which are involved in the man. So today we want to have a look at parts which makes up the female reproductive system, or the human, or a lady, or we can talk of as well a girl. Now, in female reproductive system, we have got parts such as, we'll see, we have got the uterus, which is also known as the womb. Apart from that, we'll talk of the vagina, which is known as the birth canal also. From there, we have got also the urethra as part. And then we'll also talk of the bladder. Then we have got the cervix. So we have got oviduct. Now the other name for the oviduct, it is also known as the fallopian tube. Now those are some of the parts that we want to have a look at today. Now these parts makes up the female reproductive system. Now we are going to have a look at their functions one by one, and then we'll see which parts are present in the male but are absent in the female, and then we'll also see which parts are absent in the female but present in the male. Now in relation to this, we want to start by having a look at these parts. What are their functions? What is the function of the uterus, which is also known as the womb? What is the function of the vagina, which is also known as the birth canal? What is the function of the urethra? What is the function of bladder? What is the role played by the cervix? And finally, we'll have a look at which role is played by the oviduct, which is also known as the fallopian tube. Now, our first one, we want to see womb as part of the female reproductive system. Now, just before I forget, we also have ovary, which makes up the female reproductive system. Now, the uterus, which is also known as the womb. What does this part mean to the female reproductive system? What does it entail? Now, we say that it is also known as the womb. That is, number one, it is also known as the womb. And then after that, what is its role? Now it says that it is the organ where a baby grows and develops before it is born. It is the organ where a baby grows and develop before it is born. Now this part, the uterus acts as the chamber whereby the baby is kept. It ensures the safety and the security of the child until the time of the delivery. When the time of the delivery comes, now it releases the baby to the vagina. So that is the role that the role that is played by the part which is the uterus, and it is also known as the womb, as we had mentioned. Now our second part, which we are going to talk about, we want to see the ovaries. Which role is played by the ovary? Now the plural form of the ovary is the ovaries. Now which role? We say that, remember when you are talking about the scrotum, we say that there are two in number. That is when you are talking about the male reproductive system. Now the same way the male reproductive system has got the scrotum, we also have got ovary which are present in the female reproductive system. Now we say that the scrotum produces the male sex cell which are known as the sperms. Now the same applies to the female reproductive system. Now in the female reproductive system we have got the ovary. Now the ovary, that is in singular. In plural we talk of the ovaries. Now they produce what is known as the ova, which is the female sex cells. Remember, we have got the male sex cells which are known as the sperms, and then the female sex cells now are known as the ova. So we said, we talk of ovaries. Ovaries are two oval. They are two oval organs in the female reproductive system. Ovaries are two oval organs in the female reproductive system. So that is the definition of the word ovaries. And then as much as we are having the definition, what role is played by these ovaries? Now that brings us to the function. We say their function is to produce. They produce the female sex cell. The female sex cells which are known as ovum, or we can talk of ova in plural. Now the one is known as, we talk of the ovum, whereas the plural form we have got the ova. And then from there, now we've said that the female reproductive system comprised of, we have got the ovary, in plural we talk of the ovaries. Now their function is to produce the female sex cells which are known as the ova. Now this ovum, the ovaries release this ova after every 28 days. Now when this happens, that is the process whereby the female starts to undergo what is called menstruation. Now menstruation occurs whereby now the female release the sex cells. When these sex cells are released, it means that the female sex cells, which is the ova, did not come into contact with the male sex cells, which are the sperms. So failure to which these ovaries or the ova will be taken out of the body through a process known as the menstruation. Now when they are released out of the body, they are released in form of blood. Now in that case, that normally happens after every 28 days in most females. Now during that process, when that occurs, that the release of eggs after every 28 days, when it happens, we call it ovulation. Now the ovulation now is the process through which the ova is released out of the body of the female reproductive system after every 28 days, or after a period of 28 days. Now we say the ovaries release a mature egg or ovum after every 28 days. After every 28 days in most females. Now, in most cases, you'll find that when a girl is growing, and then it reaches a point whereby the girl starts to experience the release of these eggs, and then the child becomes worried. Now, this normally can happen from the age of 9. It depends with the hormone, which are the chemical substances found in the body. Now, if the hormones are very active, the child is likely to start undergoing menstrual flow after maybe a period of reaching 9 years. Some of them tend to even go up to 12 years before they start undergoing their menses. Now, when this happens, you should never be discouraged. Always know that it means that you are moving to a puberty stage, which is another level of development. So that is the transformation from childhood to adulthood. Now, we have got, when the ovaries release a mature ovum after every 28 days in most females, this process is known as ovulation. Ovulation. Now, in that case, if you ask what is ovulation, you have to know that it is the release of a mature ovum after a period of 28 days. Now, this normally happens after every 28 days, so it means that if this happens, it has to do every month. You have to undergo menstrual flow. That is when you reach the maturity, the transformation from the child to puberty stage, whereby you start experiencing some of the things that you may have not been undergoing in your childhood. So when you start seeing this transformation, you have to know that you've moved to the next level. That is, you are becoming an adult. And then we have got our next part, which is the oviduct. Oviduct as part of the female reproductive system. We have got oviduct as the female reproductive system. Now, the other name for oviduct, we talk of it being the fallopian tube. It is also known as the fallopian tube. Now, what is the role of this oviduct? We've seen, it is also known as the fallopian tube. So, the first thing we say, it is also known as the fallopian tube. Apart from being also known as the fallopian tube, what role does it play? Now, we say there are two funnel-shaped tubes that originate from the ovaries and lead to the uterus. They are two funnel-shaped. They are two funnel-shaped. They are two funnel-shaped tubes. Two funnel-shaped tubes that originate from the ovaries, and leads to the oviduct. So there are two funnel-shaped tubes that originate from the ovaries and leads to the oviduct. What does this mean? We have got the part which is we are talking of the oviduct, this. So we say they are two funnel-shaped, so they lead to the uterus all the way here. Now, what is their role? As much as they are two funnel shaped, which role do they play? So that brings us to the function of the oviduct or the fallopian tube. Now, the oviduct, they allow ova to pass from the ovaries to the uterus. They allow ova to pass through. They allow ova to pass through from the ovaries to the uterus. So that is their main function, to allow ova to pass through from the ovaries to the uterus. Remember, we had said that ova are the female sex cells. Now, during this process, when the female sex cells are released from the ovaries, now we have got, at that point, when one comes into contact with sexual intercourse, then the male reproductive cells and the female reproductive cells become into contact, then a baby will be formed. Now, baby, where is the baby going to be formed? Now, the baby will now be formed at this point, whereby we have got the womb. Now, once the formation starts when the ovaries or the ova come into contact with the sperms. Now, when they meet, the fusion takes place. After the fusion has taken place, then a baby starts to be formed. Now, when the baby is formed, then the uterus prepares the way to welcome the baby. Now, once the uterus has prepared the way, the baby now, the newly formed, that is the stage, we have got the zygote. Once the zygote is formed, it will attach itself on the uterine wall. Now, once it is formed, it attaches itself on the uterine wall, then the baby grow from stage to stage. So from there, we'll have got the zygote, and then from there an embryo will be formed, and finally we'll have a fetus, after which a full-grown baby will now be formed, ready to be passed through the vagina, which is also known as the birth canal. Now, from there we have got our last part, which we are going to talk about, that is the vagina. So we've seen the role played by the oviduct, we've also seen the role played by the ovary, and then we've also seen the role played by the uterus. So we have got the vagina as the female reproductive system. Now, this is the main reproductive system of the female. Now, the first role you have to know, it allows the passage of urine, and it also receives the male sex cells, which are the sperms, during sexual intercourse. So those are two roles which are played by the vagina. So its other name, we've also said, it is also known as the birth canal. So the first one, it is also known as the birth canal. Other than being known as the birth canal, which role does it play? Now, we say that it is an opening of the female body that leads to the uterus, to the outside. It is role number 2, description. We say it is an opening in the female reproductives. In the female, we can talk of female reproductive system, or we can talk of female body that leads from the uterus to the outside. That leads from the uterus to the outside. It is an opening in the female body that leads from the uterus to the outside. So here we have got the vagina, and then the uterus is here. Now, during the growth of the baby, we've said that the zygote, once the zygote is formed, it attaches itself on the uterine wall, which is here. Now, once it attaches itself in the uterine wall after the growth, that is after it has reached the 4 stages, whereby the baby is now fully grown. Then the uterine wall starts to enlarge. Now during that, the fallopian tube, we have got the birth canal. Now the birth canal now prepares the way for the baby to be born. Now in that case, it also plays a role of facilitating the passage of the baby out of the body, that is from the uterine or from the uterus. So it is the passage through which the vagina, it is the passage through which one, it is the passage through which the sperms enter the female reproductive system during sexual intercourse. The sperms, it is the passage through which the sperms enter the female reproductive system during sexual intercourse. The sperms enter the female reproductive system during the sexual intercourse. Remember, the sperms are the male reproductive cells. And then other than being that, it also plays a second role, which is the baby comes out during giving birth or during birth process. The baby comes out during childbirth. And then we have got the third role, which is played by the vagina, which is also played by the penis. So we say urine comes out of the body. So those are the three major functions of the part, the vagina as the female reproductive part. Now from there we are going to have a look at the comparison. Which parts are found in the male reproductive system that are not found in the female reproductive system. So in that case, we'll have a table. We have got male reproductive, and here we have got female reproductive. So in this, the first one, we have got penis. Now in female, we have got vagina, which is also known as birth canal. Number two, in male we have got scrotum. In female we have got ovary. Then from there we have got the next part. Urethra is common to both. Urethra. We also have bladder, which is common to both. Now to talk about urethra, at the beginning of the topic, we said that in male the urethra is located at the same point with the penis, whereas in the female the urethra is located at different point from the vagina. Now in this case, you see the urethra is located at this point. The bladder and the urethra lies towards the right hand side, and then on this case we have got the urethra, which is a tube that runs through the penis. So in that case, the urethra is located at a different point in the female reproductive system, whereas in the male reproductive system, the urethra is located at the same point with the penis. Now after that, we have seen the penis, we also seen the scrotum, we have got the urethra, and then we have got the bladder. From there we also have got the sperm duct in male. So we have got sperm duct. Here we have fallopian tube. As a part of female. Then we also have uterus. Other name for uterus is womb. So we also have got the part which is cervix. That is in female reproductive system. So those are some of the parts that make up the female reproductive system. Other than that, we have got oviduct. So moving on the male reproductive system, we have got the sperm duct we've talked of, we have got the bladder, urethra, scrotum, we have got the penis, and then we also have got the testes, and then we have got glands. Now based on this table, you are able to see the parts which are found in the male reproductive system that are absent in the female reproductive system. Like when we talk of the uterus, the male does not have the uterus because the male do not carry babies. Then we also have got the fallopian tube. The male does not have got the fallopian tube, but then it is present in the female. Now what is the other name for the fallopian tube? It is also known as the oviduct. So we don't expect to see the male having the fallopian tube, and we also don't expect to see the male having the cervix, neither do we expect the male to have the ovaries. Instead of ovaries, the male has got the scrotum, which covers the testes that produce the male sex cells, which are the sperms. Now those are some of the things which are the differences which are related, or the similarities which are related to the reproductive system, that is the male reproductive system and the female reproductive system. Now based on that, there are things that we have to remember, because that's our subtopic is coming to an end. There are things that we have to put in mind. What are these things? Number one, we have to remember what reproduction is. Other than remembering what reproduction is, we also have to recall the male parts, or the male reproductive system, or the parts that make up the male reproductive system. And then from there, we also have to consider the parts that make up the female reproductive system. Other than that, we also have to know the male part that produces the sperms and the female part which produces the ova, or we can talk of ovum in singular. Now we say that reproduction is the process of producing young ones. The process of reproducing young ones is known as reproduction. Other than that, the male reproductive system consists of, we've talked of the testes, we have got the sperm duct, we have got the urethra, and we have got the penis. Those are some of the major parts which make up the male reproductive system. Other than that, we say that the role played by the testes. Now the testes produce sperms, which are the male sex cells. And then the sperm ducts allow sperms from the testes to pass to the urethra. We've also seen the urethra as a passage through which sperms leave the body, and we've also seen it allows the urine to come out of the body. Remember, urine are the waste products which are given out through the kidney. From there, we've also seen the penis, whereby we say that it introduces sperms into the vagina during sexual intercourse. Other than that, it also facilitates the passage of urine out of the body. Then we've also went ahead and have a look at the female reproductive system, whereby we say that it consists of the ovaries, it also consists of the oviduct, which is also known as the fallopian tube. Then we've said that it also has got the uterus and the vagina. Those are some of the parts that make up the female reproductive system. Now, to begin with, we've said that the ovaries produce ova. Now, what are the role of these ovaries? We've said that ova are the female sex cells. Now, the female sex cells which are produced by the female being are known as the ova. Remember, we've said the male sex cells which are produced are known as the sperms. And then we've said that the oviduct as a part of the female reproductive system are the passage through which ova move from the ovaries to the uterus. And then from there, we've said that the uterus is the place where a baby develops before it is born. And then finally, we've said the vagina allows the baby to come out of the body during birth. So that is the role of the vagina. Then we've also seen the vagina as being a part of the female reproductive system which receives the sperms during sexual intercourse. And lastly, we've seen urine also comes out of the body through that part which is known as the vagina. So that brings us to the end of our subtopic. Until we meet next time. Now, in our next lesson, we'll be talking about something to do with the adolescent.